Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. I've been getting some extremely hostile comments from viewers who are upset about my video where I pondered the question, is the X-Men 97 series that is now currently on Disney Plus a flop? Now, to some of these people, they're just so caught up in their emotions about how great this television series is on Disney Plus's streaming service that they cannot really think critically or think objectively about this television series. Now, a lot of these people want to go into personal attacks in the comments section, and many of these people really don't know my background, so I'm going to explain plainly why I am looking at this series, and I don't see it as the big success that many of the fans of this series believe that it is. Now, when it comes to my background, I have been studying Nielsen ratings ever since I was a teenager, and over the last 30 plus years of studying that data, I can look at a program and see whether it's a success or whether it's a failure. And as I've been studying those Nielsen ratings, I have also been studying the entertainment industry and have a background in studying entertainment. So when I look at the X-Men 97 series, I don't just look at it from the perspective of a fan. No, I look at it from the objective perspective as someone who knows the business of the entertainment industry. And while I have been a comic fan since I was 4 years old, I understand how the entertainment business works, and I understand that yes, some people may think a series is popular, but it may not be the success that the network originally intended it to be. And in the case of X-Men 97, the series possibly could be a flop, because when it comes to this series may be getting big ratings with all of the fans of those 90s TV shows that came out over 30 years ago, but it's not really hitting with the demographics that the Disney needs in order to maintain its subscription service. And an example of this was shown way back in the early 2000s with Batman Beyond, another show that I loved. I loved Batman Beyond, and it was a show that people wanted more seasons of. However, Batman Beyond was basically not skewering in the demographics that Warner Brothers wanted as related to its customer base. And what happened was that Batman Beyond was a show that was appealing to teens and older viewers, and it wasn't really selling with the young viewers that the network wanted, which were under the age of 13. And since the show wasn't really selling with the audience it wanted, what Warner Brothers did was end the series after it met its episode quota, and after it met its episode quota, they decided to move on from Batman Beyond, which was a fantastic show that was critically acclaimed, and I was a big fan of all the innovations that were done by Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, and the team there as related to taking Batman to the next level with a fresh take on the character. However, it wasn't selling with the audiences that Warner Brothers wanted, because Warner Brothers not only wanted the show to sell as related to it being popular as related to its innovative animation and storytelling, it wanted to be able to sell to young kids and be able to make money on merchandising. And that's where a show can be a failure, even though it is a creative success. Yes, you can have a show that can be critically acclaimed as related to the critics, but it may not be hitting in the right demographics, and it may not be hitting in the right audience. And that could be a problem that many people outside of those who study entertainment really don't understand, because those in fandom, again, they approach these characters from an emotional perspective, but they don't really see these characters from a business perspective. they don't really see these characters from a business perspective, because the goal that the studio has is to reach those young audiences, and reach those young audiences because they want those young audiences to grow up with those characters, because if the young audience grows up with characters, they are going to make big money in merchandising. That's what they used to do back in the 1980s with shows like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, Transformers, Thundercats, Silverhawks, and Voltron. It was all about getting these shows in front of young viewers so that those young viewers could be emotionally invested in those characters. And as they were emotionally invested in those characters, they were interested in buying the merchandise, like the action figures, and even buying the VHS videos, meaning that there were revenue streams not only for the production company and the studio, but also for the licensors who license merchandise like the Voltrons you see in back on my dresser. Again, this was all about trying to make sure that this is something they can merchandise to the right demographics, because they want the younger audience, and that's where a lot of people get it really up twisted as related to X-Men 97. They are caught up in their nostalgia for this 30-year-old show's revival, and as they're caught up in their emotions about this 30-year-old show's revival, they don't really see how this show is possibly a flop for the studio, because they are not hitting those demographics that they really needed to hit in order to ensure that they could make money long term. Because when it comes to a studio, when they're out here making a TV show, they are looking to be able to hit core demographics and hit those demographics strongly so that they can make money in the long term as related to making product that they can continue to maintain on their platform. And in the case of X-Men 97, yes, a lot of Gen Xers like myself and millennials like my cousin were excited about this show, but I'm 50 years old and my cousin is about 40, and again, these are not the demographics that the studio would want as related to this show, which is an animated series. No, when it comes to a show like X-Men, they wanted to get those demographics of those Generation Z and Generation Alpha viewers who are young, and those young viewers are the ones that they wanted to be the ones out here buying the merchandise. And that's where they're having a problem at Disney as related to this show. Yeah, it's popular with older audiences, but older audiences have one foot in the grave and the other one on a banana peel, and that's not the audience that Disney would want to be able to build its brand. No, they don't want that old audience that grew up with the X-Men comics in the 90s, an audience that had been getting progressively older in comics to the point where the median age of a comic book buyer is now 50 to 45 years old. No, in order to maintain your growth as a business, you need the young customer. And what's happening here with Disney is, yeah, you got a short-term success as related to that older demographic, but you don't have that young audience that many studios really need in order to maintain their business. And this is where those people in fandom are getting emotional. They're not understanding the entertainment business from the business perspective. Again, yes, you can have a show that can get 4 million views on the first 2 episodes, and that could be considered a flop if you get the wrong demographics. I mean, if you're getting the wrong age groups as related to this show, you're not going to be able to make money long term, because what you want to do is, again, get that fandom that we had with Gen X. I mean, the Gen X kids my age are still buying their toys, still buying the merch, But the whole thing is that they need the younger customers to come in, and that's where Disney is having a problem with X-Men 97. They're having a problem because, yes, you got that hit in the beginning, but that number, again, is an older audience. Moreover, that audience is not one that can grow. It's not one that can really grow once you get out of the nostalgia. I mean, yeah, you got the 4 million in the short term, but in the long term, you're not going to be able to grow that audience the way that they were with Static Shock back in 2000. I mean, with Static Shock, it was a fresh new concept and a fresh new show on Kids WB, and each year it was able to grow as a show to the point where it was the #1 show when it basically left the air. But what led to Static Shock's abrupt end, even though they had the demographics, was the fact that they could not get a license for a toy line. And I had talked to the late great Dwayne McDuffie about that, and he just really didn't really think it was serious. But as someone who knew the business, I knew that not having a toy line would impact Static Shock being on the air. And what happened with Static Shock was that show basically wound up not being considered for a 5th season renewal, all because they didn't have that toy line, because these shows are not just meant to be on the air, they're also meant to move merchandise to younger customers. And again, you want to hit those demographics. You want to be able to hit the young viewers. You want to be able to go and get those kids and get them to grow up with the product when they hit those tween and teen years. You want to be able to hit those core demographics, and that's where X-Men 97, yes, it's popular with comic fans, but it's not popular with those millennials, not the millennials, but the Gen Z and Generation Alpha, those kids that the Disney desperately needs to be able to move merchandise, because they cannot really maintain their business on older customers who sit there and, yeah, you'll watch this with your kids, but your kids are sitting there saying, no, this is not my character, these are not my stories, because we've had the X-Men turn into an X-mess over the last 30 years. I mean, in the comics, the X-Men have become a complete mess with all of the just terrible storylines. And I remember watching World Class BSers and them talking about X-Men 97 the same way I'm talking about it now. And they see the same problems with the show. Yes, you've adapted a lot of stories from the comics with season 1 in those 8 or 10 episodes. But the critical question that has to be asked is, where do you go from here? I mean, you've adapted the entire Bastion storyline. You've adapted Life Death. You've adapted Inferno. I mean, where does the show go at this point? Because the storylines get progressively worse once you get the adamantium ripped out of Wolverine. We're going into Bone Claws Wolverine, which was not a great story. We're going into Age of Apocalypse, which really has not done well merchandise-wise as related to retail. I mean, Age of Apocalypse, the entire line was on clearance at Amazon and is at Ollie's right now. So you're getting ready to adapt material that really did poorly as related to X-Men merchandise, and you're really starting to run out of stories, because after this is Legacy Virus, and then we go into New X-Men, which is a completely different concept. So we're really running out of road because they rushed out all of these stories. And again, from a business and creative standpoint, which is where I come from, this series, again, yes, it was popular with a lot of fans because of nostalgia, but when you start to really critically look at this series, yeah, it's looking like a flop when you look at it objectively, because you basically are not hitting those key demographics that you want. You're not really getting the viewership that's on that level of Mandalorian. I mean, Mandalorian in season 1 was doing blockbuster numbers, and when you look at X-Men, it's got 44 million views at the best, and again, Mandalorian had 40 million views, and again, you have a show that's doing 10 times less numbers than Mandalorian. So I'm looking at the numbers as related to the ratings, and this show ain't looking like a hit. especially when you look at the demographics of 300 million people in the United States, and you're looking at over 6 billion people in the world. Now, Disney Plus is available in over hundreds of countries, and again, 4 million viewers in hundreds of countries on is not a lot of people. Again, even in the syndication days, that number really isn't strong enough to be able to keep you on the air unless you have something going on with advertising and merchandising. And with streaming, there's not much money on advertising, so it may be creatively, critically acclaimed, but the whole thing is the show is not pulling the revenue that it should be. And even the X-Men 97 figures, they weren't that hot until the show came on. I mean, I have family members who also collect, and they were telling me that there were figures on clearance outside of possibly Rogue, Gambit, and Wolverine. Really, it was just Wolverine who was selling like hotcakes, and Rogue and Gambit started selling a lot better when the show came on. But those figures were not really selling like hotcakes when they first came out in December of 2023. No, I remember still seeing these figures on Big Bad Toy Store, and some of them are still up there on Big Bad Toy Store, but you'll have people online getting into their emotions, getting into a frenzy, saying, oh, X-Men 97 is the greatest thing. It might be a pretty solid show, but the whole thing is that this show, as related to the books, ain't really pulling in the revenue. And if it ain't pulling in the revenue, then the studio can look at it and go, hey, yeah, people are talking about this show, and it's not pulling in those demographics that we want. Now, when it comes to folks, they're sitting there saying, oh, the show got renewed, but what they don't see is the big picture of television like I have for many years. And again, you can't really sell 10 episodes in syndication to other to other parts of your network. I mean, 10 episodes ain't gonna cut it. So yeah, they did renew season 2 and season 3 so that they could meet an episode quota, and they wanted to meet an episode quota because they need to be able to sell this show after it does its run on Disney Plus. No, once they get out of Disney Plus, they need to sell this show on other platforms. I mean, they need to sell the DVD or the Blu-ray package. They need to be able to sell this show to the Disney Plus network because you need more episodes to be able to sell this show. So yeah, they're going to renew this show in order to meet those episode quotas. It doesn't mean that the show is successful at all. It means that they want to find a way to continue making revenue on the show, and they want to continue making revenue on the show, hopefully to be able to move some more merchandise as related to things like the X-Men 97 figures, because we don't have a complete team just yet. No, we don't have a complete team just yet. So what they want to do is, again, go out here and renew the show, hopefully to try to sell more merchandise. But the whole thing is that it's not really pulling that young audience, and that's where the problem lies with this show. It lies that, yeah, you're pulling a 4 million audience, but the 4 million is nothing compared to what Mandalorian was doing. I mean, Mandalorian was doing 10 times the numbers, and they want the Mandalorian type numbers for these kind of shows, not no 4 million. 4 million is nothing because there are YouTubers who can get 4 million as related to views on 2 episodes. Again, we're talking about 2 million views per episode. Again, that's nothing compared to YouTube. Even WWE gets 2 million viewers every week. So that's not really a big number. When you start looking at the numbers of 300 million people in the US and 6 billion people across the globe, for a service to do those kinds of numbers, again, that's really a weak number when you consider that there are broadcast shows that get 10 million viewers, like the recently canceled NCIS Hawaii, which recently, again, with 10 million viewers, which is anemic compared to the 80s, where The Cosby Show was doing 25 million viewers a week, and All in the Family was basically doing more than that. I mean, the numbers for X-Men 97, when I look at them, are very small, and again, very small when I look at those numbers. But you have guys in their feelings. Oh, the show is great. Yeah, the show could be great creatively, but if it's not pulling in those numbers, you have budgets per episode. And again, you have to be able to make more than what you're making. And again, this show was impeded by being on Disney Plus, where you have to pay to sub to watch it. And the whole thing is that if they're not pulling in enough revenue on this show is not really a hit for the studio. That's just the basic facts of things, but people, they want to think that feelings triumph facts, but facts are always triumph feelings. And again, when it comes to facts, when you look at this show as related to the demographics, as you look at the numbers, this show isn't looking like the major hit, especially when you compare it to Mandalorian or even Netflix's Luke Cage. I mean, Luke Cage was crashing Netflix's global servers, and that really showed how popular that show was. I mean, X-Men 97 was not crashing servers, but Luke Cage crashed servers. So I listen to these people with their arguments, and they make no logical sense because they're coming from their feelings about these characters, coming from their feelings about this show as related to the nostalgia that they're having, but they're not seeing this show the way a business person would. A studio executive would look at this show and say, yeah, it's doing all right as related to views, and we have contracts with Hasbro as related to merchandising. So what we're going to do is go out and renew this show just to meet those numbers for the quotas, and then what we're going to do is just move on after that. But again, people can't see that because they're in their feelings and don't understand the business. Now, some guy decided to want to take a shot at my characters and my SJS Direct universe as related to trying to defend this show. But what they don't understand is that as related to SJS Direct characters are still fresh and new to viewers. And again, if I was to get a deal to put those characters on the air, they may possibly appeal to many of the people who are a part of Gen Z and Generation Alpha, because they are new characters and new stories, and not characters from 30 years ago from a 30-year-old show. And those kids can say, oh, these are new characters made for me and my life and my experiences. That's what can happen as related to adapting a new character. And that's what people at Disney really need to be focused on, because if your show ain't hitting it with Gen Z and Generation Alpha, then you're not really reaching those customers that are essential for your business to grow. Again, my issue with X-Men 97 as related to presenting the argument was saying that, okay, we have this show and people are emotional about it, again, as related to nostalgia, to getting up on Saturday mornings. But in the business world, when it comes to these shows, they want to hit key demographics with these shows. They want to be able to hit those demographics of those kids, those tweens, and those teens. And again, this show wasn't hitting those demographics. It wasn't hitting those numbers. And it wasn't hitting those numbers because it's a 30-year-old show based on comics that basically have been derailed 30 years ago. And it's not hitting those demographics because those comics were from 30 years ago. Comic shops we're down to about 500 comic shops here in America. So nobody knows who the X-Men are. And nobody under the age of 25 really cares. No, we've had kids growing up for 30 years with anime, kids growing up with manga, and they see those characters as their characters. It's not like us Gen Xers who grew up with the X-Men. I mean, I grew up with the X-Men. I have a milk crate full of X-Men comics from Inferno, from the Brood, from the Extinction Agenda. I have all of those comics, but even though I am a longtime comic fan, and I have all the Marvel Legends figures, and I had the 5-inch figures when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I can look at the X-Men 97 series and see it as Bob Iger being disconnected and detached, Yeah, you'll make a little money in the short term from the nostalgia from toy collectors like myself, but when it comes to the kids out here, they want to see their world and their experiences, and that's why we have many in pop culture struggling, because many of us don't want to give those kids their own pop culture, give them their own characters, give them their own stories, give them their own life experiences that show them their life and their world. And we're losing those customers over at studios like Disney, where they continue to, yes, you make stuff based on old franchises that are extremely old. I mean, Star Wars is 50 years old, X-Men is over 60 years old, and the show is again 30 years old, and it's not really hitting because it's not really hitting those kids. And again, it's not hitting those kids because it's not answering the critical question a screenwriter like myself has to answer, and that question is, why should we care? When it comes to Gen Z and Generation Alpha, they see no reason to care about dad's characters or dad's stories or even granddad's characters or granddad's stories, and nobody's really looking to write towards them and tell them their stories. I mean, that's what I try to do with the SJS Direct stuff in the SJS Direct universe, and even my sitcom I wrote, All About Nikki. Now, All About Nikki was resonating with kids, and it was resonating with kids because it was a teen show about teenagers growing up in the, even though it was a 90s style show, it was written to be accessible to kids in the 2000s. And the SJS Direct universe was written with a lot of references to the current present day. So I'm trying to write stuff that's new and fresh for people. And again, new and fresh to today, to relate to today's audience, because you cannot really approach a young audience with older characters and a world that's completely different to them. I mean, when X-Men 97 was on the air, we had regular broadcast TV on tubes, we had the internet in its infant stage, we had people who were had CD players, and we had PCs that were basically, basic Pentium 1 back then and PS1. And now we live in a different age in 2024 where we're no longer using Pentium computers. No, we have computers that are like Core i5, 9th or 12th generation, that smoke the doors off a Pentium. We no longer have tube TVs anymore. We have flat screen TVs that are the size of a movie screen. We have people watching content on their cell phones, and we have streaming services, and people aren't just stuck to television, and the whole world is completely different. And as these kids have grown up in an internet age, they're not seeing entertainment that reflects their life. They're not seeing entertainment that reflects their world, and they look at X-Men 97 again and say to themselves, yeah, this is Dad's show or even Granddad's show. This is not my show. No, they're sitting there watching anime, they're watching and reading manga, and you got guys in their feelings about the X-Men, in their feelings talking about, yeah, it's a great show, but it's not great for the demographics that Disney needs, and that's why Disney is struggling right now. They're not hitting those demographics that make them the big money. I mean, the money that's made at Disney is on kids. It's on tweens and teens. I mean, I studied the resurgence of Disney from when Michael Eisner took over. And when Michael Eisner took over, he focused mostly on kids. That's why we got hits like Little Mermaid and Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast. And we got TV series like Gargoyles and all of these other series that went on to become fan favorites in the 90s. And in the 2000s, the focus was on making low-budget sitcoms like The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and many other shows like the other shows like Hannah Montana. Again, all of those shows were targeted towards kids to make the big money from the kids. It was made to make that kind of money, not meant to make money from a small niche demographic like toy collectors like myself who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. No, they want the kids that can go out here and spend huge amounts of money. That's what the studio really wants. But you have guys, again, in their feelings, not understanding the big picture of the entertainment business, not understanding the big picture of why X-Men 97 could possibly be considered a flop by a studio, could possibly be considered a flop because you're not hitting those numbers as related to the demographics you need in order to move the merchandise in larger numbers the way Saban did when he had Power Rangers. I mean, when Saban had Power Rangers, he was hitting those key demographics back in the 90s, and he was not only having the show be a hit, but was moving huge amounts of merchandise. And with Power Rangers, they made a ton of money on those old action figures and continue to make money on action figures today, continue to make money on DVDs, continue to make money on the series. And again, this is a business, and again, a lot of folks don't understand the entertainment business. Yeah, they want to be fans of the characters, but if you have, in order for you to understand, in order for this fandom to grow, you need young customers, and you need young customers to come in, and you need young customers to come in and buy these products on the regular. You need young customers because young customers are the base for the business. They are the base for all of what we've seen as related to the entire toy collecting and nostalgia business. I mean, the reason why you see all of this going on is because you had people out here and they watch these shows, they love these shows, but the whole thing is that, yeah, you love this show, but kids need their own content, they need their own thing, and that's where a guy like me comes in, because I'm looking to create new characters and new stories, because new characters and new stories relate to the next generation. And sadly, we have people at these studios not focused on the next generation. They're just focused on nostalgia. And again, nostalgia will get you a short-term boost of cash, but it's not going to lead to big long-term profits. And you need brand new characters and brand new concepts to be able to reach a new audience of kids, tweens, and teens. That's what the problem is over at Disney, that X-Men 97 is all about. Yeah, you're making characters of another generation, but you're not making anything to appeal to this brand new generation, and this brand new generation is being lost as related to the entertainment business as they tune into anime and manga, and as they tune into anime and manga, Japanese businesses are making money hand over fist and leading to Disney possibly being on its way out as the major entertainment company here in America. Now, if you want to pick up some of my action-packed fantasy fiction on the SJS Direct universe, such as the ISIS series, the Esteem series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy designed to appeal to today's audiences and audiences of all ages, you can find those books on paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format, and you can also find them at other online bookstores like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to pick up my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can find that comic on Lulu.com right now for the same price as the 2022 Kickstarter. And you can also find my other comic, Esteem No Good Deed, in Esteem Blast from the Past paperback, and you can also find it on digital format for just 99 cents. And if you want to check out how I would write a TV series, you can check out my screenplay book all about Nikki the Fabulous first season. And I wrote this show to be similar to many of the 2000s sitcoms and 90s sitcoms that came on television, such as Saved by the Bell, and shows like The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Hannah Montana, Victorious, and many of the Nickelodeon shows. I wrote it to be a kind of family-style show that mixes The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Clueless, and the kind of show that kids would love and enjoy. So that book is also available in paperback on Amazon.com as well, and it's also available in digital format at a whole lot of online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me, make videos and continue creating content about the entertainment industry, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati, the man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in digital format at Amazon.com, Google Play, Draft2Digital, and other digital booksellers, or pick up your paperback copy on May 24th. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.